I want you to go ahead and completely throw away your typical image of a European summer. Seriously, just forget about those sun-drenched beaches, the historic town squares packed with tourists, and those warm, carefree evenings. Instead, I want you to step directly into a very different, and honestly, a very urgent thought experiment. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're looking at a scenario that challenges literally everything we know about the continent. Endless summer, endless smoke. What if Europe's fires just never stopped?
Okay, so let's dive right into this. I want you to imagine a permanent cycle of fire. No season of rest, no safe return to normal. What if, instead of packing up your car for a vacation, millions of us were packing emergency go-bags? Imagine waking up, checking the news, and you're not looking at the weather forecast to see if it's a beach day. No, you're looking at evacuation maps, smoke warnings, and live fire front updates. Think about that contrast for a second. On one side, we have our old memories of summer, right? Festivals, pure relaxation, the smell of rain on warm pavement. But on the other side, a shocking new reality. Sirens blaring in the distance, skies tinted this permanent hazy orange color. And that smell of rain? It's entirely replaced by the persistent, suffocating scent of ash. It's a heavy sensory shift. You wouldn't just see this crisis, you would be breathing it in every single day.
So here is the absolutely crucial point to understand. An endless fire season isn't just a repeating weather event. It is a permanent civilizational crisis. When a fire season never truly ends, it triggers this massive cascading breakdown across all of society. Literally everything, from how people live and work to how governments function to how we simply breathe, begins to change forever.
Section 1. Nature under constant attack. The collapse of the ecological loop.
Let's look at the first and most immediate victim of this endless crisis. And it's a grim ecological loop, both fascinating and totally devastating. Step 1, the forest burns. Step 2, the fire season just keeps going, meaning there is absolutely zero recovery period for the land. Step 3, vulnerable young saplings that try to poke through and grow, well, they're burned before they can even mature. And finally, Step 4, the soil loses its nutrients completely. Without roots acting like an anchor to hold the earth together, hillsides become incredibly vulnerable to landslides, rivers run dirty with erosion, and dense forests permanently shift to patchy scrub. Nature simply cannot hit the reset button.
The heartbreak of this is immense. It really is. Europe's natural beauty would just slowly erode, year after year. Tourists who once traveled thousands of miles to hike green alpine trails or soak in those lush Mediterranean landscapes would be met with scarred slopes and blackened tree trunks. Wildlife nesting grounds would be constantly disrupted, and conservation efforts, they would perpetually lag behind the sheer pace of the destruction. Moving on to Section 2, the economic shockwave, fields and flights in jeopardy.
Because the crisis doesn't just stay in the forest, right? It triggers the simultaneous collapse of two massive European industries. In agriculture, farmers are suddenly dealing with smoke exposure ruining crops, massive heat stress, completely unpredictable harvest schedules, and insurance costs that are literally going through the roof. Over in tourism, the entire image of a European summer shifts from sunlit relaxation to danger management. Hotels suddenly need evacuation policies, airlines face constant visibility delays, and whole regions have to completely shift their business models just to survive. The evaporation of predictability basically ruins both crop yields and holiday bookings all at once.
And you know, this directly impacts your dinner table, putting essential staples seriously at risk. We're talking bread, wine, fruit, milk, vegetables. All of these rely on major producing areas that would be repeatedly facing smoke and flame. The logistical nightmare of trying to move equipment and relocate livestock under fiery skies means food prices would absolutely spike. And history tells us, pretty clearly, that when food systems become fragile, social stability is never far behind.
Section 3, systems pushed to the brink, infrastructure under stress.
As the temperature keeps rising, the sheer volume of infrastructure failures would hit all at once. Heat is literally warping roads and rail lines. Power grids are suffering massive outages from controlled shutdowns just to prevent random sparks. Emergency water systems are being totally drained to fight the flames, and hospitals, they're overflowing with smoke-related respiratory cases. You have to remember, our built environment was designed for comfort and convenience, definitely not to withstand a permanent, relentless state of emergency. And this impossible reality forces emergency responders into a state of constant triage. Just imagine being a fire chief, sharing aircraft and satellite mapping across European borders, trying to make these impossible daily decisions. Which fire threatens a hospital? Which fire can actually be slowed down? And which one is completely unstoppable and just needs to be evacuated around? The physical and mental exhaustion on cross-border fire services would be absolutely staggering.
Naturally, this immense pressure forces a massive shift in climate politics. Climate adaptation used to be this long-term, sometimes theoretical debate for future generations, but now it becomes an urgent, daily political reality. Budgets have to be rewritten immediately. Hard questions are being asked every single day. Are rural communities being protected? Are we actually managing the land properly? This scenario takes abstract policy and turns it into a daily fight over resources and survival, pushing leaders to prove that their emergency systems actually work right now, today.
Section 4. The psychological human toll. The erosion of normalcy.
Now, we really have to talk about what this does to the human mind. This is the hidden burden of vigilance, the suffocating psychological toll it takes on everyday people. You never fully unpack your emergency bags. You check your air quality app as obsessively as you used to check your text messages. You sleep lighter, your brain always partially awake, just listening for the distant wail of a siren. Even an open window is no longer a breath of fresh air, it's a calculated respiratory risk. People would bounce between chronic anxiety and complete emotional numbness, just trying to cope with the exhaustion of constant emotional readiness. Consider this really powerful truth. The old memory becomes a warning. The new reality becomes adaptation. Think about the generational grief here. Children growing up in this version of Europe would inherit stories from their parents of lush green landscapes that are now black and scarred. The places that held their family's happiest memories literally become sites of mourning.
Section 5. A laboratory for resilience. The forced evolution. But humans are incredibly stubborn, right? And to survive, Europe would be forced to become the world's strongest laboratory for resilience. We're talking aggressive forest management, radically overhauled fire-resistant building codes, deep, seamless continental coordination, and super accelerated data sharing across borders. Climate resilience moves from being just an abstract buzzword into a mandatory, rigorous daily practice, baked into the very foundation of how cities are built and run.
Historically, humans have built thriving cities directly on top of active volcanoes just for the fertile soil. We are nothing if not stubbornly adaptable. And through all this smoke and fear, this profound truth remains. Crisis changes life, but it does not remove humanity from it. It actually makes humanity more visible. Because even in a burning world, neighbors would still take in evacuees, meals would still be shared in shelters, volunteers would still be out there handing out water and masks. Life, love, and community continue. The resilience of ordinary people always shines brightest when the sky is at its darkest. Ultimately, this scenario has massive global stakes. What happens in Europe would be a blaring warning siren for everyone else on the planet. It is the absolute ultimate test of what happens when climate emergencies stop being isolated events and become the permanent, unchangeable landscape of our lives. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. If this challenged how you think about our environment and our capacity to adapt, keep exploring and keep questioning. Because if the fire never stops, then neither can the work of prevention, adaptation, and solidarity. Which leaves us with this final, lingering question to think about. What kind of future are we actually willing to build?